Hello, welcome once again to Off the Shelf Books on Tour. This is a hard book, Wired, and my guest is driven from Providence, Rhode Island, and I'm going to have him introduce himself so I don't mess up his name. Very hard book.
Well, my name is Paul Caranci.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And why did you think it was so hard?
It's
I hate to be
it's
the
almost
interviewer.
scary. You're very brave. Are you foolish? To
Probably
put
more
it,
of the latter.
but to have lived through it, and then to put it in print. Haven't you been through enough already?
You know, a lot of people have asked me that. But I wanted to get my side of the story out. Growing up Italian in North Providence, Rhode Island, which is a very Italian Americanized community, I'm a third generation resident. And what I did in the Italian community is not considered virtuous. I've been called a rat. And that's how being an informant for the FBI is viewed among Italian Americans.
But it's about Irish and everybody else
Well,
too,
you're
kid.
right, you're right. And I think maybe even more so because of the glamorization of the Italian mafia with the Italians. But most people couldn't understand why I would go to the FBI. Why not just talk to these people? Why not deal with it politically? Why, not beat them at the ballot box? Why did you have to take this extraordinary step? And during the whole 17 months of the investigation, I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody about it. From the point of the arrests in May 2010 up until the last trial in 2015, I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody, not the press, nobody. So my side of the story never came out. In fact, there were many times when my boss, the former Secretary of State, was accused of harboring someone who was a criminal, someone who was involved in this conspiracy and only went to the FBI to save his own skin.
But what I think is important for the viewer to know, at the beginning of the book, you question the behavior of 3.
Yes.
And at the end of the book, you got 13 federally indicted.
Yeah, 10 actually
Yeah,
were federally indicted.
So what you saw was just the head of it.
Yeah, well, I knew that it was more widespread than the 3. I didn't know who the other players were at the time. But, obviously if 3 people are getting bribes and kickbacks, someone has to be paying them, so they're involved. And generally there's a middleman or 2 because they don't have the wherewithal to know who to go to extract the payments. So I knew it was more widespread, I just didn't know who, and I couldn't prove anything. That all came out over the course of the 17 months.
But in that 17 months, you, your family, your kids, your property, you suffered at the hands of the people who knew a lot more about you than you knew about them.
That's true. They did know more about me, and they followed me and they studied me. During the actual 17 months that I wore the wire, nobody knew. But as soon as the arrests happened and the indictments were in the paper, it became, very clear who the informant was. So even though there was no acknowledgments on my part or the FBI's part, everyone pretty much knew it was me, and that's when the harassment started from that
Not
point.
only the harassment, but you and your family were isolated from friends,
Yes.
from people who were, I didn't know whether we should lock the door when you came in today.
Well, you're very brave having me there.
Oh, I busted a couple of them myself, kid. But
Oh, good for you.
not on this level. And I'm not sure if I would be as brave as you were to persevere. No, not so much for myself, but for my family and the people that I love. It's one thing for me to stick my nose out there, but to jeopardize their life, their livelihood, and their happiness, I think I'd quiver. I really do.
Well, there were times where I certainly did. I recall very clearly when the first arrest happened in May of 2010. I was in Baltimore, Maryland. My wife had a conference there, and I had flown from Indiana, where I was helping a friend campaign, to Baltimore to join her at the conference. And that's when they were arrested the first day I was in Baltimore. I had promised my daughter that she could use my car while I was away. I had a newer car than she had. So now here I am 400 miles away from home. She's using my car. Nobody knows I'm away from home. So they're thinking I'm driving the car. And I was very afraid at that point that something might happen to her,
Yes.
thinking they were getting
And
to
that's
me.
a very real
Oh, yeah.
fear. Yeah.
So I asked the FBI to do a sweep of the house and the cars, and they did.
Mm-hmm.
The FBI was extraordinary through this. They couldn't represent me in court because I was an informant, not a a client of theirs,
Mm-hmm.
right? But they were incredible with the amount of protection they gave me, and there was one time when one of the people involved in the conspiracy wanted to meet me face to face, and I had to record the conversation, and I was certain that I was going to be found out. It was the very first time I was face to face with the recorder, and when I got back home after, I told the agent, there were actually 3 agents at my house, and I said, well, boy, we had a meet in the car because he didn't want to stay inside the establishment that we met at, and they said, we know. And I said, how do you know? And he said, we had about 6 agents watching you from different vantage points. I said, so what if he took me for a ride and he took me to one of the other conspirators' houses and they found the wire? He said, you never would have got that far. We would have stopped you long before you made it that far.
Well, that would have been nice if they told you that
Yeah,
before.
Exactly. there were a lot of surprises in the way, but they
Yeah.
certainly had my back. I mean, I was a key witness for them, so it was self-serving for them to have my back. But I'd like to think it was also, a little virtuous on their part that they wanted to protect me because I was doing something
Well,
good
that's
for them.
pretty positive to hear because unfortunately the FBI in the Boston area keeps on getting a black eye here and
I know
there
it.
and falling short of expectations of the general public.
Yeah. And, I had 2 FBI agents from the Massachusetts area that were working with me. And one went on, shortly after this case, went on to become the chief of white-collar crime for the whole country. But he was
So you're
here
telling
in
me
Boston.
you have friends in high places while these guys are trolling you
Well,
across
I have
America.
acquaintances in high places. I don't know about much of a friendship.
Now, how long has the book been out?
This came out in March of 2017.
Okay, and what kind of praise, honor, or backlash? Which one is the most percentage-wise?
Well, I think mostly praise.
Good.
There's been a little bit of backlash, but that happened even before the book, so I'm not too concerned about it.
You must own stock in Goodyear Tire.
You might think I do. Me and my whole family, because the last incident was my mother-in-law who lives with us. Her tire was slashed in my driveway. So they get all the cars. They're indiscriminate. So at one point, my son and my daughter were both living with me, and my wife obviously has a car, and my mother-in-law. So we had 5 cars parked out there. And at one point or another, most of them have been hit. And not just flat tires. They've been outright vandalized, dented and scratched.
So you bore the expense of this investigation as well.
Yeah, unfortunately for me, the FBI doesn't reimburse you
Yeah,
for
and
that
I
kind of
suppose
stuff.
you could call your homeowners
Yeah.
and say the mafia just came and punctured all my tires.
Yeah, and the claims are even too small to put in. I have a $500 deductible, so you're not going to put a claim in for a $300 dent. But I have an old car, so I'm not overly concerned about it. It's
But
getting
at
older
any
by the minute.
point, did you say enough already? I'm, going to pack my briefcase and leave?
No, for several reasons. One, I'm not going to be chased out of my home. I did have to leave the state to find work after the Secretary of State's employment ended, but I wasn't about to be chased from my home. It's 3 generations now with my kids and their kids. 5 generations call North Providence home. Not only North Providence, but the village of Centerdale within North Providence. So we're very localized, and no, I'm not going to be chased out for doing what was right. But I did have to leave to get a job, and that was probably the hardest part of my whole experience. My family had to stay here. My wife works in Roger Williams University Law Clinic, so she had to stay behind, and my kids as well. So, at age 59, I guess I was at the time, I had to pack my bags and go 1,000 miles away. I guess at a time when,
Very volatile.
oh yeah,
You
yeah,
wouldn't want to be, although you can almost breathe easy being away from home, but not knowing that your family was
right,
there, and those who know you weren't there.
right, right. Yeah, that was concerning.
Do your neighbors appreciate you?
Not all of them.
No, I
No,
wouldn't know.
you get a lot of, congratulations, you did the right thing, and you did a good thing. But you also get a lot of, but
What are
we
you,
don't want you
nuts?
around here.
Yeah.
Well, I get plenty of, are you
Yeah.
nuts? Which is why I wanted to write the book, because I really wanted people to hear my side of the story, why I did what I did.
Well, in a way, it protects you somewhat.
Possibly does,
Right.
yeah.
I'm not going to read the court transcripts. I'm not going to follow every newspaper publication.
Right.
Word of mouth travels faster than even the internet.
Yeah.
So, in putting it out, and that's why I said it was hard. There were so many names,
Yeah.
so many positions. Who's on first? Who's on second? It's not an easy read. It is interesting enough that you want to keep on going. But the brain does get a little tired after
Sure.
page 150.
Yeah. Well, it was a widespread conspiracy, and you had. I needed to introduce the players at the beginning of the book, and also to understand why I would do what I did. You have to understand me, and why I would be involved in something like this.
Made me think of that outline your English teacher used to make you do in high school. The title, the people, why, how come, and when.
Yes.
And that's exactly
The
how
W's.
it read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's a very complex story. I tried to make it as simple as possible, without
Diminishing.
losing the flair, right?
Yeah.
But there is complexity there, and you have to be aware of that when you're starting to read it. The people that are local certainly know the players already, so it's easy for them. But someone that's not familiar with the local politics and North Providence, you have to learn who the players are, and there's a lot of characters.
The last line in the book is a sad epitaph of our society.
I would say it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
That don't just close the book, but look at your own government, because it's probably happening in your backyard too.
Yeah. Corruption is everywhere. It has been from the beginning of time, and it probably will be with us until the end of time. And the only way to diminish corruption and its
Put a
effects
light on it.
is exactly, people have to get involved. The time to look the other way and pretend it doesn't exist, or pretend that that's just the way business is done,
It's not
that's
acceptable.
got to be behind us. Exactly, it's
But
not
when
acceptable.
you say that, you're very often alone in a crowd and the only one.
Yeah, which is why the things that happen to me, because it's so lonely where I am. If a politician who was about to get involved in a conspiracy to accept bribes or demand kickbacks knew that 5 out of every 10 people would turn him in, he would really think twice about it. Because the penalty, the 5 and 6 year jail sentences that these people got, record sentences for white collar crime in Rhode Island, but those sentences weren't worth the money they got. No. I have a friend who was a former Deputy Secretary of State in Rhode Island, and he used to, say in jest to me all the time, if you ever read my name in a newspaper about being involved in some kind of bribery scheme, if it was anything less than $10 million, it wasn't me. At least the reward is maybe worth the punishment at that point. But for the few thousands of dollars they got, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, that had to be split among 4 people in most cases, 5 when I
They
got
had
involved.
to pay off, and they had to pay off, and they
Yeah.
had to pay off.
And it's just not worth risking 4 or 5 years in jail, especially at when you're 40, 50, 60
Kids
years
at
old.
home, embarrassment. Where's daddy?
Yeah, you risk losing your jobs and your pensions and everything. It's just not worth the
Did
risk.
you write it by yourself?
Yes.
Have you written before?
Yes, this is my 7th, and I now have 8 published books.
Good for you.
Yeah,
Are the
I
other
love
ones
to
as
write.
hard to read?
No, the newest one actually is about Our Lady of Fatima and the apparitions there, and it's a 100-year perspective because those events took place in 1917. So it's a 100-year perspective on the promises of Fatima and what they mean to us today.
Well, she must protect you because you're here.
I pray an awfully lot to her, and
Yes,
yeah,
isn't
she
she a
does
cool
protect me.
lady?
She
I
most
would love
definitely
to have
is.
you bring that book for us to review,
I certainly will.
and it will balance out.
Yes.
And that, what did you want to grow up to be?
Well, when I was young, I wanted to be an astronaut.
Okay.
And then when I
You
was,
may yet go to outer
I may,
space.
be launched. It could happen sooner than we think. In high school, college, I wanted to be a doctor. And then the realization hit me in college that that wasn't meant to be my life. And I always had an interest in politics, even as a young boy. So I just started taking political science courses, public administration courses in college, and found that I really enjoyed it. So when I graduated, I became a public servant, and part of the state government bureaucracy, and then ran for office. I ran 3 times before I won. I'm certainly a model of persistence. But I ran in 1984, 86, and 92, and I didn't win a seat until 94.
Do you like the connotation that's attached to politician?
No, but it doesn't have to be, because politicians get to do good work. There was one story that I relayed in the book about my son, who at 5 years old got insulin-dependent diabetes, and he was. I was at the time had an insurance policy that I wanted to change. I had Blue Cross Major Medical, and I wanted to get Blue Cross, the policy where you pay the $10 copay and it's all
HMO.
covered. Yeah, yes, and they wouldn't let me switch. They said if you switch, the pre-existing condition clause kicks in, and there's 1 year that your son won't be covered for his diabetes equipment. Well, I couldn't afford that, but I said it's ridiculous. I'm not changing jobs. I'm just asking to change my policy, same company, but a different plan within that company. And they said no. So I was able to use my influence as a councilman to go to the General Assembly and have that law changed. As a result, the pre-existing condition clause was eliminated from all HMO policies written in Rhode Island. We're the first state in the country to have done that, and way ahead of the federal government when they eventually got around to doing it. So you can use a position to do good things. That benefited over, just about 1 million people.
But you
in Rhode
never
Island.
hear that doesn't make the front page
No,
of the paper.
it doesn't. Only the bad stuff does, as with any industry. I mean, you only hear even about we're talking about the Catholic Church with Our Lady of Fatima, but even that, you only hear the bad things about priests. You never hear the good things. You never hear the lives they saved and souls they saved. You hear indiscretions, with the one priest or something. So that's just a sensationalism of the times we live in. But it seems that in politics, everybody's painted with that brush, and it's so widespread.
That's why I like to ride the fence. I'm not a politician. I'm a bit of an advocate. But the important thing is nobody controls my paycheck. Nobody can fire my husband. Nobody can touch they can't shut me up.
And what a wonderful place to be.
Oh, I love it. And my reputation precedes me.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
And it works.
Yeah.
I get the truth. I had a chief of police tell me one day that if I ever came at him with a clipboard in my hand and a mad look in my eye, he'd take off his badge and his gun and he'd run for Canada. Now that works.
And I've only known you for about 20 minutes, but I believe it.
Gee, I wonder why. How does are your family proud, or do they wish to absent that from their entire life memory?
No, I think they're proud of what I did and the position I took, and I certainly think it was an example for them that I want them to emulate if they would.
Really? You would wish it on your kids?
Well, I wouldn't wish it to be in that situation, but if they were in that situation, I would hope that they would do the same thing I did. When my wife and I first were talking about what we should do, there were a lot of constituents that I represented that were being hurt big time because of what was going on. And I took an oath to protect their interest when I became a councilman. And I took that oath very seriously. It's an oath I took several times. I was elected many times over the course of my career. And I took it seriously. And I really felt I owed the people that level of service and that level of protection. So when it came time to do this, we were faced with a situation of just, ignoring it, letting it go on, or doing whatever I could do to stop it to protect the people I served. And what we concluded was this: if we were to ignore what was happening or acquiesce to what was going on, simply to preserve the style of life we had, to maintain the friendships, to not cause any problems with my job or all those things, why was I any different than those who took the bribes to enhance their own lifestyles?
Skullduggery. That's all I could think of when I finished it.
Yeah.
But quick, we have to break so you can read us something. But
Okay.
when you were in school, when you were in college studying political science, did they ever hit upon situations like this?
Never.
Did they ever tell you that they're not all honest and they're not all truthful? And
we talked about George Washington Plunkett of Tammany Hall a bit and things like that. But even that was considered honest graft for the day. I mean, now it's looked upon with a frown, but back then it wasn't considered a criminal. And there's still so many things in government that are wrong, but they're not criminal. It's just politics.
Yeah.
And that's what's so bad about our system.
So now you're going to catch your breath.
Okay.
And set up to read for the public what you worked very hard to write and I worked very hard to read.
Okay, so I mentioned that I had run several times before I actually won. My first campaign was in 1984. And in that campaign, I realized that the mayor was doing something that I thought was illegal. We in the town of North Providence, had a municipal landfill, which meant that we didn't have to pay the $32 per ton disposal fee for every ton of waste that was disposed of at the central landfill that was owned by the state, because we could use our own landfill. Because of that, it was a protected resource, and it was protected by state law that preserved any dumping at the landfill for North Providence residential waste only. Commercial waste wasn't allowed, out-of-town waste wasn't allowed, but I knew that that law was being violated on a daily basis, and I suspected that it was being violated because the mayor was gaining some benefit from it. And I tried to prove it. So I did that by calling a Providence Journal reporter and asking him to accompany me that next morning, very cold February morning, to follow a garbage truck, watch it collect waste from commercial dumpsters, and then deposit that waste in our town landfill. And the reporter failed to show. I think the morning was too cold for him. But I went anyway. I decided to follow the truck myself, take some pictures to give to the reporter. And I got caught by the driver of the garbage truck, who approached me and threatened my life, and I very quickly left. And that was that. The campaign ended. I was never able to prove that there was illegal dumping. In fact, most people said I was crazy for even thinking that there was illegal dumping. So I'll pick it up from there with the book. While I still had no actual proof of the illegal dumping, I was convinced it was happening. But without hard evidence, the issue died without much fanfare. Around the same time, Gelato Mastraccio Sr. of Providence and Joseph E. Olivo of Cranston were involved in a narcotics ring in the state's capital city of Providence. Mastraccio knew that the police were closing in. He also believed that if nabbed, Olivo would snitch and tell of previous crimes that had been committed, including one murder committed by Olivo himself. The paranoia got the best of him. On Valentine's Day 1984, Mastraccio, according to police reports, executed Olivo with a gunshot blast to the head. Then, with two accomplices, he cut Olivo into pieces with a chainsaw and scattered the remains in Providence dumpsters. About a month later, Olivo's shredded torso was unearthed by police detectives digging in the North Providence landfill on Smithfield Road. According to the reports written by Providence Journal investigative reporter C.J. Shivers, Town officials and local engineers began asking a simple question. If the landfill accepted garbage only from the town, how did the contents of a dumpster from Providence, which included Olivo's remains, end up at the Smithfield Road site? By the time the story appeared in the newspapers on July 25, 1995, Mastracchio was behind bars. A series of civil actions had forced the closure of the municipal landfill. Town officials referred to the operation and the twisted history as a joke. For me, it was vindication. Running for a town council seat is not generally considered a hazardous venture, but being right on this issue could have gotten me killed.
Well done. Like I said, it wasn't an easy read. Congratulations. I'm glad you lived through it.
Me too.
I don't know if I'd wish it on you, but I guess I'm glad that Lady of Fatima protects you.
Our Lady protects me
brought
all
you
the time.
through it and taught you how to write about it and brought it to us. Good luck.
Thank you so much, Ron.
Hang in there.
I will.
Please come back again another time.
I'd love to.